My dear students, today I will be talking about entrepreneurship for startups. I mean entrepreneurship in the context of startups. I mean, people have lots of questions in their mind when they want to start their own business. They really want to know what type of product or services I should be getting into, how to build my team, what sort of qualities in terms of the leadership I should have, how should I raise money, how should I get into the marketing, what type of strategies I should follow. So we will be discussing in brief about some of those things you should be doing or you should be taking care of when you want to start your own business. The first and the foremost is the business case. I mean, you have to put yourself into the customer's shoes and sort of ask these basic questions to yourself as to why customers should be using this product and service. The second question you should be asking to yourself, why this particular product from your side should be used by customer. And the third most important question is, why should he use it now? So basically, the three questions, if you are able to answer or able to articulate, that should give you a proper frame of mind in terms of making sure that your product positioning is right. When you are saying that why this particular product should be used from yours, मी थांबलोय तर मी त्याच्यावर येतो पण. So by first question, you are almost defining the value proposition. By the second question, why should I use yours product? You are basically defining a differentiation. By third question, you are trying to define whether you are solving the pain point of the customer or an opportunity at the right time. Basically, it is trying to tell you whether you are early to the market or whether you are late to the market. And if you are able to answer all these three questions properly, I think you have a good business case for the product or for services. One of those things you could do if you are confused or if you want to talk to people and find it out, I think what you could do is basically go to any CEO who has started his company 3 months back. Reach out to him. What would happen is that that particular entrepreneur might have started his company in only one idea. Basically, he would have already shortlisted 10 business ideas. At the end of the day, he would start a business only in one idea. So there are potentially 9 business ideas with him. And you can also possibly choose from one of those ideas. So basically, if you meet 3 or 4 entrepreneurs who have started their business in recent time in the domain which you are interested in, you can get a lot more business ideas for your own startups. The second is, the team. Team is going to be extremely important for any company. And how to build your dream team is going to be a very, very important factor in terms of building your company. Now, as a team, if you are an CEO and if you want to start your own company, basically you have to analyze your own self. You have to know which are your strong points, which are your moderate points, and which are your weak points. Because every person is naturally talented at some areas. He can do other parts of the businesses, but he might not be extremely competent in those areas. Also, what happens typically in the startups is that when you start your own company, you're living in the kind of dreams. It's very glamorous to have a startup. But the moment you get into the startup, slowly you have to get into the routine activities of your startup also. What does it mean? It means not only you are working on your product, not only you are developing the product, but now you have to have the functions of marketing, selling, human resource, operations, finance. So that really means now that person has to get busy also in terms of collection of the invoices, collection of that money, solving the problems for employees, and so many routine things he has to do. And slowly what happens is that he starts losing glamour out of it because he believed that startup is very, very exciting. It is very exciting, but now he finds that a lot of time of his is getting spent on this kind of activity which he is not enjoying. And that precisely brings to a point that how to build your team in terms of complementing your weaknesses. I mean, you are strong in your own one area or two areas maybe, but the rest of the areas you need to build the team, or you need to complement yourself with those people who are extremely competent in your weak areas, and those are their strong point and they enjoy it. Some people are very strong in strategy, some people are not so strong on the operations. Now you need to get the people who are very strong in the operations. Now if I am a strategy guy, I am in a big picture kind of area, but if some persons are on the operations side, these operations people have essentially to be a very minute, detail-oriented people. They have to have that kind of eye. They are like if I can call them like headmasters, very strong in terms of executing the things to the minutest detail. Now you need to get those people who can complement you, who can be very strong on the operations, who can be very strong on the HR. So building the right team is going to be very important, so that you, as a thumb rule, you are contributing or you are working in an area as an entrepreneur in the area of your strength. And that's a golden rule. 85% of your time should go in the area of your excellence, or where you are naturally talented at. Because in this competitive world, believe me, there is no scope for 70% or 80%. The absolute winner that can be created in this competitive world is provided each of you as a team play at 95% of efficiency. And can you build a team which can perform at that 90%, 95% efficiency? That's going to be the crux. Also at the same time, you need to build a culture of transparent communication with the team members. I mean, that's a normal good practice. In your startups, you have to make sure that the communication, irrespective whether it's good or bad, you have to communicate very transparently. One of the good methodologies that can be done in terms of many formal or informal communications is that when you make a kind of a monthly presentation to your team, the first slide should be talking about your highlights. of what are the good things that have happened in the last 1 month. And the second slide should talk about the lowlights. What are those bad things that have happened in the month? By giving this highlights and the lowlights and good points and the bad points and communicating it transparently with your team increases their confidence. Also, it is very important for you to paint your picture of your entrepreneurship or the kind of the business idea or the services on a big canvas. I mean, they should see that vision. Your team should see the vision, and at the same time, you should be able to articulate that what is that role that each team member can play and how important it is. That means the participation of your team into your dreams. That is going to be important, because as people say, you can buy time from many people, but you cannot buy motivation. You need an involvement of all team members, and therefore this articulation is going to be very important. Some of the things which do require, to get the people on board, because the things which I talked about when the people are on board, but when you are trying to get people from outside in the company, one of the good practices you can do is that whenever you have this monthly meeting, and if you have a prospective person who is going to join to your company, call him to your meeting and let him be a part and parcel of that meeting, which is happening in a more transparent manner. He will get more confidence because he knows that you as a team are not hiding any information, whether it's a positive information, whether it's challenges, whether there are problems, whether there are opportunities. You are all discussing on the same platform, and he feels very comfortable after the meeting, and the chances are that most probably the chances are that he's going to join, because there is a kind of a trust level that is already built up in this scenario. Leadership is going to be a very important factor. I mean, the startups, basically the leadership is where you need the kind of leaders who are living in the phase of uncertainty and at the same time able to iterate on their business model or the idea very fast. That's going to be a very, very compelling factor for the leadership trait, which is going to be required for the startups. The second part, which is going to be very important for the startups from the leadership perspective, is about the passion. Passion about your dreams, passion about your products, passion about your services, whatever you are trying to build. I mean, the investors, your stakeholders are investors, your consumers who are going to consume your service, and the employees. These are the essentially three important stakeholders of the business. And each one of them and every one of them have to see your passion. They have to see that you are completely passionate about your product idea, about your entrepreneurship, about your startup, about your enthusiasm. I mean, the passionate has different levels. Passionate, second level is consummate passion. The third level is extreme passion. Fourth level is a passion such an extreme level so that it becomes an obsession. I mean, that level of passion which is infectious for all the stakeholders to believe. Because if you don't believe on your dream, nobody else will believe. And that's going to be an essential factor. From a leadership trait perspective, it has to be highly infectious passion, which should really encompass all the stakeholders. Coming to the next point is about the investments. Many times we have a question that from where the money will come in, what should I be doing, what type of preparation I should be doing, what type of business plan I should be creating, whom should be approaching, what is that those investment people, I mean the people from angels, people from VCs, people from different parts who are friends and families, what are they looking at when you are trying to make the presentations? The first and the foremost, when any investment is being made, or if you talk to any classical VCs or the angel investors, the first and the foremost they look is the team who is going to be executing on this particular product or services. That's going to be very important for them, and I think that has an highest weightage in terms of making their decision. And second would be, what's the market opportunity, what's the level of competition, how many substitutes are available for this kind of a product and service. These are essentially the factors they would look at. In terms of, when you are trying to make those presentations, simple rule 10, 20, 30. That's a simple rule you need to be following. And what is that 10, 20, 30? Your presentations or any presentation should not be more than 10 slides. It should not be going all over like 30 slides and 40 slides and details. Nobody in the world has time to really get into those kind of details. Your presentation has to be crisp. If it is simple, if it is effective, you should be able to express your business concept in 10 slides. So 10, 20, it should not be more than 20 minutes. 30, it should be font size 30. What is that means is that, even your presentation in your slides, there should be those points. It should not be completely clamored by all that text in the short font which doesn't make it readable. I mean, it should be very clean, simple kind of a presentation. 10, 20, 30. That's the maximum you can do in terms of, the size and the length and the font size of the presentations. The third point in the investment is you need to reach out to these investors quite early into your product development cycle or your business cycle. What it does is that if I am approaching a particular VC or an angel investor right at the early stage, maybe at an alpha product stage where I have only 2 people, next time after 3 months, if I go to this particular angel investor or the VC, and if I tell them now my product is in beta stage and now I have like 7 to 8 people, what it shows is the momentum. It shows that there is a momentum and you're working on your product on a positive momentum side. So, you should not be late in approaching the VCs. Third important point is you're talking about your sort of, weaknesses in the business model right at the early stage. I mean, every business will have strong areas and weak areas. If you only tell strong areas and if you don't talk about the weaknesses of the business or where this is going to be, the problems which potentially this business is going to face at any point of time, you should be upfront about it. That builds a kind of a trust, and that also tells to the investor that this particular person is analyzing his business from both perspectives. He is not only living in the dreams, but at the same time his feet are entrenched on the ground where he knows what are the possible areas where the weaknesses would be, and maybe there is a chance for weaknesses to cover. Also, you need to put in your biographical information quite early in the presentation. The investor should really get a chance to look at your biographical information in the early part of the presentations. Because in this competitive world, you are not going to be judged by many a times how you are going to be performing in the latter part of your life, but how you have performed so far. So your history is going to be very important of how things you have done in the past and what things you have done in an impressive manner in terms of whether in the startups, earlier startups, or an entrepreneurship inside the company, or what are those things you have done which are very impressive in nature. That has to be also communicated, because he builds a kind of interest in terms of the capability also. And not always you have to raise the money. There are many creative ways where you can really do the business in a bootstrapped manner. And it requires a lot of creativity, it requires a lot of passion, and it requires a lot of convincing. In one of those companies, Gallo, in 1993, a winemaking company, they went to multiple banks, investors, and nobody were there to give them loans. What this company did was that they went to the farmers and they told them that, okay, can you give me the grapes and I will make the payments in a deferred manner when I sell wine. So that means he was not going to pay any money upfront to the farmers. He went to the equipment manufacturers, the crushers, fermentations, told them that at this point of time I don't have that kind of money to pay you. Can you give me 90 days of credit? Can you give me those equipments and I'll pay you 90 days later? He could have hired a very high-fly consultant in terms of making wines. He didn't do that, or the team didn't do that. What they did was they went to libraries, they found out information, and they tried on their own and saved on the expenses of the consultant also. And the same company, having done this, now is doing a business of $600 million. And if you talk about the companies like Hallmark cards, the greeting cards we see, or the company like Domino's Pizzas, the company which is like a household name even in India right now. These companies were started in an extremely bootstrapped manner with investment less than $1,000, and just imagine what's the level they have reached now. So you could be creative, aggressive. Managing the cash is the mantra. Conserving the cash, stretching rupees or stretching that dollar to a maximum extent is going to help you. These were certain investment mechanisms I talked about. Some of those things you can already start doing is that start building relationship with the banks. You need to build a relationships with the banks when you don't need. if you get into the building the relationship of the banks, when you need the money, they'll squeeze you. So you need to build a rapport with these guys and build a credibility with the financial institutions, because at latter point of time in your startups, you will require their help. So those are the kind of the things which you could be doing. The next point which I am talking about is about the strategy. And many times there is a question as to what strategy I should be deploying or using in terms of offering my services or offer my product. Many times there is a temptation that we get horizontal. Many a time you stick to only one area, but you are not very sure. And I can tell you from my own experiences, one of those things which helped me, or rather it might help you in your own set of businesses, is how to drive a niche area. I mean, I'm taking a very classical case study. You are doing a kind of a startup, a services startup, which is a classical IT startup. You are doing a classical IT, Java, .NET kind of services, working for a hour, dollar per hour kind of mechanism. And you want to build a company which is in a niche play, which should be known for a certain area. What are those things you could do? I mean, you can think of. And the same questions are there for a lot of companies in their startup phase. And one of those ideas came from a book. This is L. Rice and Jack Trout, The Great Marketing Warfare. Very simple, not using any kind of management jargons. What he did in that book, it's like, I believe this book is like in 1960s or 70s kind of time frame. And what they did during those times, they compared the traditional wars versus the corporate wars. And those traditional wars which were fought on the ground for a physical territory, for example, US versus USSR, Russia during that time. And these marketing wars are going to be fought in the mind of people. And what he did was, he tried to compare how this US and USSR, Russia for this matter, how they were fighting as in kind of the countries, and how it can relate to the corporate wars. For example, Pepsi versus Coke, these are two giants. How they are fighting that battle. It's almost like a similar kind of stuff. Two giants, big companies, big countries fighting against each other. What sort of strategies they should be using, what type of methodologies, what type of thought process they should be deploying. And there were all these topics where big versus small, big, medium versus big. And there is a topic which is small versus big. And the small versus big, it was a very clear depiction. And he said that if you fight a traditional war with these companies, where they are large in numbers and you are small in numbers, and he just took up one example, the enemy has 10 people and you have 5 people, and he proves that in 3 rounds of exchanges of fire, you will be completely eliminated. So there is no fun. There is no fun in fighting the traditional war. What he says is very important. He says that you don't expect to win a war. I'm talking from a startup entrepreneur perspective. So just imagine you are trying to fight a battle where you are a small company and there is a big opponent standing over there. And what he says is that don't expect to win a war, but you can expect to win a battle in that war. You can expect to win a battle provided you choose a battlefield such that you attack the enemy at his weakest point by your strongest force. So that's a kind of a message he gave. So he said that don't go for that complete war, find out those weak spots. Find out where the enemy is weak, and can you find those weak spots, and can you create a strategy of attacking that spot by your strongest force. just taking the example of IT and just extending that thought process. Every now and then we have seen that there's hundreds of new technologies which are coming. And these new technologies are unproven many a times. People are trying out their hands. They're extremely new. What happens is that even if the company is very big, and I just took an example, just take an example of a big company having 25,000 people, and you have a company which is like 30-40 people. You are just in a startup phase, and you want to fight with this 25,000 people company, and you have like 30-40 people to start out. That's the kind of the problem definition we have. And in this scenario, I'm just trying to assume that there are 100 new technologies which are coming, are there, and this 25,000 people company, how many people they might be deploying on these all new areas? Even if they deploy 10 people, 15 people on each of this technology, give them a benefit of doubt, which I'm sure they might not do. 20 people per technology, and if 100 technologies are there, whether you take compilers, whether you take graphics, communications, mobile, imaging, all those things, there are always going to be these new technologies which are going to be in the place. Now 20 people per a new initiative, it means 2,000 people just doing R&D. Out of this 25,000 people, more than like 12% of the company are only doing R&D. Doesn't make sense. It is not the case, but still giving the benefit of doubt, it is this 20 people company, 20 people initiative they are putting in. Now, can you think of that there are these 100, in that complete big war, there are all these 100 battlegrounds. Now the question to you is, first, out of these 100 battlegrounds, which is the battleground you should be choosing? Because you are not fighting a war, you are only fighting one battlefield. What you should be choosing? The bigger company can afford to deploy 20 people on each of the battlefield. You of course cannot. You don't have that bandwidth. You are like 40-50 people company. So which battlefield you should be choosing? And there could be certain more drivers to it. So one of those areas where you can think of a battlefield, the battlefield should be such that it should be absolutely virgin. That technology could have been launched just 3 months back, so that nobody can claim that I'm working in this technology or this initiative for last 20 years. Even if that company is like 50 years, but this battlefield, this technology being new, just like in virgin area, they can't claim just because this technology itself has come in last 3 months. So that's number one. And number two is whether that initiative, if let's say any mobile technology or any RF technology or Bluetooth technology or this, the kind of the areas where we are seeing a lot of traction, let's say tablets is the area where right now at this point of time there is a lot of traction. Windows Mobile 8, which is coming like new one at this point of time. Now, whether this battleground is backed up by a cache-rich giant. So Windows Mobile 8 is being backed up by Nokia and Microsoft at this point of time. Now Windows Mobile 8 has just come in. There are not many people who can claim that they are experts in Windows Mobile 8. So two criteria. First, it should be virgin. Second, it should be backed up by a large cache-rich giant. What that cache-rich giant will do? This cache-rich giant, for example, Microsoft or the Qualcomms of the world, they have enough of the cache and they will make almost like 50 to 100 to 200 companies adopt that technology just because of their cloud, their muscle power. Which really means during the course of the time, in the next 6 months to 9 months, there will be at least 100 to 200 companies who would be adopting this technology and developing the products, deploying this technology. With this, what should be now the approach plan for the startup? So what startup has done? Startup has decided not to play a war. What is the startup? Second thing they have done, they have identified a battlefield out of those 100 battlefields, And with those 100 battlefields, one of those identified battlefield where he wants to fight a battle, what was the message given by L. Rice, or the book says at that point of time, for that battlefield you attack the enemy, because now you know the strength of the enemy at that battlefield. It is not more than 20 people. Can there be a game plan where you attack the enemy who is playing that game with 20 people? Can you play it by 100 people? Can you play it by 75 people? Now just imagine, you are just increasing from 40. That's a big leap of faith. It's like a zero-sum game. It's a binary game. Provided, and startup is like an uncertainty, which I talked about some times back. So if you fight that battle with 100 people or 75 people, which is roughly 3 times, 4 times the size of the battle, the people deployed by the larger company, the chances are you are going to win that game. Much more, just because it's a very focused, very concentrated, very identified, and a kind of a ruthless attack on that battlefield. And for sure, the whole hypothesis has been that this is virgin and this is not proven in the marketplace till this point. I mean, it is still to get that kind of momentum. You have to be extremely cautious about your timing. You cannot be too early into the market because you might be starving. You cannot be too late in the market because it could be Me Too kind of a game. There could be lot many companies. So your timing has to be right, and which I talked in my first part in terms of your business proposition. Why should your customer buy your service right now? That was the point I mentioned in my business proposition, which talks about the timing. So your timing has to be right in terms of playing that battleground. And if now there is a further kind of a development in this battlefield, sure, you are going to win a battlefield. You are going to be the king of that battlefield, not war, for some time. Provided, now you have to watch yourself, again the timing is important, that if the battlefield gathers the momentum and it sort of the marketplace or the kind of the total market for this service offering or the product offering is too large, the big players are going to come to that battlefield with the strongest force. I mean, there are chances now that you might be 100 and this 25,000 people company might come with 1,000 people or 500 people. And that's the point. You need to do either of these two. Either you switch to a new technology or a new battleground, or you exit that battleground and get merged with the competition. And those would be coming in as a part of the exit criteria. So that's the kind of the strategy you could be driving in terms of creating a business which is known for its own kind of center of excellence, or for the technology excellence, or for the business model excellence. If you are known for a particular business model or a business service or the product excellence, and if you have a critical mass, there will be many companies in the world who would want to acquire you or partner with you, and that gives you a great chance to change your plans in terms of shifting the gears or changing the battlefield, because then you are leveraging the partner's might, the partner's capital, the partner's marketing advantage, the partner's management in terms of changing the gears, and that way you will be able to approach the new marketplace in a much scalable manner. संपलं? किंवा कुठे संपलं ते मला माहिती आहे. म्हणजे हे 30 मिनिटं होऊन गेली, 25 मिनिटं, 35 मिनिटं नाही म्हणजे So having played that battlefield, which was unproven at that point of time, you have won that battlefield, you are guarding that battlefield, but you have to be extremely careful about taking it further, just because if this battlefield has a larger market share, a kind of a demand in the market, what is going to happen is the bigger company, this 25,000 people company, might come in and put in like 1,000 people over there and just will crush you, because at that battlefield now again the same game is being played. You are 100, but he is 1,000, he is 10 times your size, and the chances, I am sure, you are going to be crushed. And at that point of time, it's going to be very important for you to make two choices. One of the choice you can make is to choose another battlefield, which is again relatively weak for the competitors area, and start playing that battlefield very aggressively, which could be change in technology or change in the product offering, change in the business model itself, or find out a partner who can either acquire you or who can join your hands. Because since you are now a kind of a player which is a niche player, you are known for that particular excellence, not many companies would be interested to leverage your offering, experience and expertise and take it to the marketplace. You on your own self, it will be difficult for you to change the battlefield or grow vertically in that battlefield on your own just because you are limited by your size. What you could do is get acquired by the partner, and this partner can bring in those things which you are lacking of. One is the capital, second is the management, and third is the reach for the marketing. So what you are doing now is complementing the partner company has all those three areas, and you have the expertise, and because the bigger company can take this expertise to a marketplace, you have a greater chance of taking it to the next level. So these are some of those strategies which I was talking about. And the last thing which I would be discussing in a very, very brief is about marketing and how to stretch your dollars in the initial phases. And this is extremely difficult in a fragmented space, how to go about your marketing. And those would happen in a subtle manner and a direct manner. And the subtle manner would be, how to leverage your personal skills and get a very kind of dollar efficient marketing. I mean, you go to the newspaper and start advertising. It's going to be very costly. But the same way, as I was talking about the banks, you need to build a relationship with the press people. And you need to identify what they want. So initially at the early part of their relationships, what you could do is research a particular story for them, because they are in lookout for those kind of stories. If you feed them those kind of stories, automatically you are building those kind of relationships. So again, the point is same. You need to build the relationships when they need you, not when you need. Start acting in terms of a entry point as a thought leader. And what could be those things? Start writing blogs. It's one of the very efficient ways. Take up the speaking engagements in those conferences and start talking about the topic which can demonstrate your understanding, depth of your knowledge. You should be looked upon as a kind of a thought leader in that space. I mean, your approach should be. You might not in the initial phases. And in terms of the marketing, you need to find out what is the complete ecosystem. You have to map ecosystem, because you don't have a kind of muscle power to reach out to your consumers just because you don't have those kind of rupees or dollars. So what you are doing is you are trying to map out the ecosystem and trying to find out what is the complementary play. One of the examples I would say in this particular case is that, for example, you are a digital marketing and brand management company for an hospitality segment, and you are creating this particular product, and now you are trying to get into the hospitality industry the hotels and the restaurants and those kind of places. Now what you are trying to do is trying to map out the ecosystem. Who are the players who already are deeply embedded into this area? There are facility management products, there are point of sale products, there are booking engine products, there are the feedback products, there are the F&B providers, food and beverages providers. There are all these point of sale, these kind of products which are already there. There are already these 5-6 companies, type of companies who are already selling their products into this area. You need to find out the positioning and how complementary you are to this particular offering. So how complementary you are to the POS, how complementary you are to the FMS, so that you are riding on their channel. So you are not basically creating your own channels of marketing. Because your dollars are limited in the startup phase, what you are doing is doing the smart partnerships and making sure that you position your products as a complementary product so as not to threaten the existing players and ride on their channel. And if you are able to create these partnerships, this would be one of the efficient ways to reach out to the marketplace. I've tried to, talk about the entrepreneurship for a startup where, initially when I started out, I was trying to give you a kind of a synopsis in terms of what should be the business case, what should be the team, what should be the traits of the leadership, how to raise money, investments, how should you get into the strategy part of it, and how should you be planning about your marketing. I hope I was able to give you some insights on the startup entrepreneurships. Maybe those would be useful in latter part of your life as you become entrepreneurs. Thank you.